The morning light passed through the transparent walls of Galactic Academy, painting golden lines across rows of alien students. The Academy floated high above the blue clouds of Epsilon Prime, a neutral world where hundreds of species studied together. For many, it was a place of peace. For a few, it was a place of tension. Among the crowd sat Evan Ross, a young human from Earth. He was new here, one of only a few humans who earned a scholarship to study interspecies diplomacy. He sat quietly in the back row, surrounded by beings from planets most humans had never heard of. And 2 seats away from him sat Lyra, the Deathworld girl. She never spoke much. She never laughed or argued. She just sat, straight-backed and silent, her violet eyes always fixed on the teacher. Her skin had a faint silver hue, like soft metal in sunlight, and her hair shimmered with blue light when she moved. But what made everyone keep their distance wasn't her beauty. It was her origin. She was from Rautel, a planet known as a death world. Everything on Rautel could kill you. The air was filled with spores that melted flesh, the rain could burn through armor, and the animals had evolved to survive against all odds. Even, the Galactic Council had classified her kind as biologically extreme and combat reactive. Most students whispered that Deathworlders weren't people, they were living weapons. Still, Evan didn't believe that. He had seen her eyes, sad, quiet, and lonely. Someone who wanted peace, not war. The class began as usual. Their instructor, Professor Nail, floated in on his small hover disk projecting holographic screens of ancient wars. The topic today, the ethics of primitive planets. As Nail spoke, the students started to debate. A tall reptilian male named Rockthar raised his scaled hand. His claws clicked against the desk as he smirked. "Professor," Rockthar said loudly, "how do we decide which species are primitive? The humans are weak, fragile. The Deathworlders? Savage beasts. Maybe they don't belong in this academy at all." Several students chuckled. Others looked uncomfortable. Evan's jaw tightened. He didn't like that tone, the same tone bullies used back home. He glanced at Lyra. She didn't move. Her face stayed calm, emotionless. Nail gave a polite warning. "Respect is required, Rockthar. Every species here is equal under the Galactic Code." But Rockthar wasn't done. "Equal," he said, leaning back. "A Deathworlder in our class is a danger. I read the reports. Those things killed an entire patrol during a peace test. How is that equal?" The air grew cold. Evan could see the faint tremor in Lyra's hand, her fingers gripping the side of her desk. She still said nothing. "Enough," Professor Nail said firmly. "We will move on." But Rockthar wanted an audience. He slammed his clawed hand on the table, his voice rising. "I'm not sitting next to a predator pretending to be a student." Evan finally spoke. "Then move." The words came out quiet but sharp. Rockthar turned to him, surprised. "What did you say, human?" "I said move," Evan repeated, eyes steady. "She's done nothing to you." Laughter rippled through the room. "Oh, the human defends the monster," someone whispered. Rockthar's grin widened. "You think you can protect her?" He stood, towering over Evan. His scales shimmered dark green, muscles flexing under his armor vest. "Let's see if humans bleed as easy as they look." Before anyone could stop him, Rockthar reached into his belt and pulled out a knife, a curved blade used for ceremonial combat. Gasps filled the classroom. "Rockthar!" Professor Nail shouted. "Put that away now." But the reptilian ignored him. He pointed the knife at Evan. "Say sorry, little Earth boy, or I'll carve your respect." Evan froze. He'd been in fights before, but never like this. The blade shimmered with a faint electric charge. He backed away slowly, heart pounding. Then Lyra moved, or maybe she didn't. Evan wasn't sure. One moment she was sitting. The next she was standing between him and the knife. Her eyes glowed faintly. Her expression was calm. "Too calm, sit down," she said softly. The class fell silent. Rockthar sneered. "Stay out of this, Deathworlder. Or you'll—" He didn't finish. The knife suddenly crumbled in his hand. No one saw Lyra touch it. There was no sound, no flash, just a brief blur, and the metal fell in sparkling dust. Rockthar stumbled back, eyes wide. His hand was shaking. Tiny cuts appeared on his scales like he had grabbed molten glass. What did you do?" he whispered. Lyra tilted her head slightly, her silver hair sliding over her shoulder. "Lesson over," she said. No one spoke. No one even breathed. Professor Nail floated closer, scanning with his holographic pad. "Lyra, and what just happened?" he asked carefully. She looked at him. Her voice was steady. He wanted a demonstration of power. He received one. Then she turned and walked toward the door. The entire class moved aside as she passed. Even Rockthar stepped back, trembling, clutching his bleeding palm. Evan couldn't take his eyes off her. He felt no fear, only a deep curiosity. Who was she really? How could she do that? The door slid shut behind her and the silence stayed. That night, the academy corridors buzzed with rumors. Every student talked about the Deathworld girl who crushed a weapon without touching it. Some said she was a telekinetic. Others claimed her species used microfield manipulation. Evan couldn't sleep. He replayed the scene again and again. Her calm eyes, the faint shimmer in the air, the knife turning to dust. He finally opened his holopad and searched Ratel Deathworld. The results were mostly redacted. Lines of black covered every document, but he found a small section from an old research report. Subject, Ratel native. Condition, adaptive combat reflex. Observation, biological response to threat instantaneous. Conclusion, dangerous beyond known parameters. Directive, do not provoke. He sat back, his heart racing. Instantaneous response to threat. That meant she didn't choose to react, it was her biology. She was built to survive, and yet in that classroom she hadn't killed anyone. She just ended the fight, Evan whispered to himself. She controlled it. She stopped herself. The next day, Academy security sealed the classroom. They said the incident was under investigation. Cameras had recorded nothing but static. During the moment of the knife's destruction, the video feed glitched exactly when she moved. Professor Nail avoided talking about it. Rockthar didn't return to class. No one did. Only Evan showed up early, waiting, hoping she might return. But Lyra's seat stayed empty. The soft light from the windows fell across her desk, untouched, cold. Hours passed. Still no sign of her. Then, as the sun set over the distant clouds, Evan heard the classroom door hiss open. He turned and froze. Lyra stood there, her uniform slightly torn at the shoulder, her eyes glowing faintly in the fading light. She looked tired. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. Evan stood. Neither should you, he replied. For a second, her lips curved into a faint smile, something halfway between sadness and kindness. Humans, she murmured, almost to herself. Always curious, always brave. What did you do yesterday? Evan asked. How did you? I didn't do anything, she interrupted. I reacted. You broke his knife without touching it. Lyra looked down at her hands. Small scars ran across her palms, glowing faintly like burned metal. That's the price, she said quietly. Evan frowned. What price? She lifted her gaze. Every time I stop myself, it hurts. Every time I don't, someone dies. The silence between them was heavy. Outside, the floating towers of the academy shimmered in the evening light. Are you in trouble now? Evan asked. Lyra nodded slightly. They'll come. They always do. They don't want Deathworlders here. They call us unpredictable. Then why are you here? Evan asked. To learn, she said. To change. To prove that not everything from Ratel kills what it touches. For a moment, Evan saw something fragile behind her calm face. Not power, not fear, loneliness. I don't think you're a monster, he said. Her smile returned, faint but real. That's why you'll survive longer than most. Then she turned to leave. Before stepping out, she looked back and added quietly, Evan, next time don't stand between a predator and its prey. And with that, she vanished into the corridor. Evan stood alone, staring at the empty doorway, his heart pounding with a mix of awe and fear. He knew one thing for sure now. Lyra wasn't just another alien student. She was something beyond comprehension. Something that didn't just live on a death world. She was born from it, and he had just become the only human who dared to stand beside her. For 2 days, Lyra didn't return to the academy. Her seat remained empty and whispers filled every hallway. Some students said she was arrested. Others claimed she was sent back to her death world. But no one really knew, except Evan Ross, the human boy who couldn't stop thinking about her. He sat alone in the cafeteria, pushing cold food around his tray. Every few minutes, he looked toward the door, expecting her to walk in. She never did. The rumor channels on the HoloNet were full of her name. Deathworld girl attacks classmate. Uncontrolled biological weapon in Galactic Academy. Human accomplice under investigation. That last one made his stomach twist. He wasn't her accomplice, he was her friend. At least he thought he was. That evening, Evan walked the silent halls of the East dorms. The windows looked out over the floating city, where ships glided between glowing towers. The view was beautiful, but his mind was elsewhere. He stopped near the restricted wing, a dark corridor guarded by a silver security drone. He had heard that all information about Ratel, Lyra's home, was stored deep. Inside the archive room beyond this door, he needed answers. Evan pulled his tablet and played the code. He'd copied from Professor Nail's class login. The door flickered, buzzed, and slid open for a few seconds before locking again. That was enough. He slipped inside. The archive room was huge, cold, silent, and glowing blue from thousands of suspended data cubes. He walked slowly, reading the labels. Ratel Ecology Classified. Adaptive Physiology, Level 10 Access. Incident, Deathworld Treaty Breach. His fingers trembled as he selected the oldest file. The cube projected a holographic report, half of it blurred out by redacted lines. But one paragraph remained. Ratel natives exhibit biological evolution in real time. Threat response is not conscious, it is instinctual. Exposure to danger triggers molecular reinforcement, creating instant adaptation to any hostile environment. Recommendation: observe only from orbit. Do not engage physically. Under no condition attempt containment. Evan's heart pounded. That meant Lyra didn't decide to crush the knife. Her body reacted to the threat automatically. She wasn't dangerous by choice. She was dangerous by design. He kept reading. The last line of the file froze him completely. Subject Alpha, female juvenile identified as Lyratel of the Ratel Prime Cluster. Status: escaped. Last seen heading toward Epsilon Prime System. Escaped? He whispered. They were keeping her locked up? A sudden beep echoed behind him. He turned around and saw the security drone floating near the door, red lights glowing. Unauthorized access detected, it announced. Security dispatched, Evan panicked. He grabbed his tablet, shut down the cube, and ran out through the emergency exit. The cold wind from the upper platforms hit his face as alarms began to blare. He sprinted down the maintenance bridge, his heart hammering. He had to get back to his dorm before they caught him. But when he turned the corner, someone was already waiting there. Lyra. She stood in the shadows between the corridor lights, her silver skin faintly reflecting the glow. Her eyes were calm, but there was sadness in them. You shouldn't have gone there, she said softly. Evan stopped, gasping for air. You disappeared. Everyone said, they're looking for me, she interrupted. You shouldn't be part of this. I read the files, he said. They called you Subject Alpha. You escaped some kind of experiment. Her gaze turned sharp. You weren't supposed to see that. Then tell me the truth, he said. Who are you really? She looked away for a moment, then stepped closer. I was born on Ratel, she said quietly. My people adapt to survive. The council saw that as a threat. So they took me when I was a child. They studied me, measured me, wanted to know how we evolved so fast. Evan's hands clenched. That's not right. You didn't hurt anyone, Lyra smiled faintly. Not yet. She moved closer until they were face to face. Do you know what happens when a Deathworlder is cornered? He shook his head. We don't run, she whispered. We change. The word sent a chill down his spine. Suddenly, a distant alarm echoed through the halls. A robotic voice boomed from the ceiling speakers. Containment breach detected. Subject Alpha confirmed on campus. All units respond, Lyra sighed. They've found me. Evan looked toward the emergency stairs. We can run. There's a transport bay on the south platform. No, she shook her head. If I run, they'll think I'm attacking. If I fight, they'll be right. You can't just stay here and let them take you. She smiled softly. Evan, this is not your fight. It is now. He snapped. They'll blame me anyway. So if you're staying, I'm staying. For the first time, she looked surprised. Then she whispered, humans. Always stubborn. They ran through the corridor together. Red lights flashed on the walls as defense drones flew past. The sound of heavy boots echoed. Academy security armed with stun rifles. They reached the lower training hall and hid behind a row of lockers. Lyra looked pale, like her body was struggling. Her palms glowed faintly again. What's wrong? Evan asked. My biology, she said weakly. The more danger around me, the more my cells start changing. I'm trying to stop it. Can you control it? Sometimes, she whispered. But not if they fire. The security team entered the hall, scanning with motion lights. Subject Alpha detected, the lead officer said. Lethal force authorized if containment fails. Evan's stomach dropped. Lethal force? You're students. You can't. Lyra pressed a finger to her lips. Stay quiet. The officers advanced slowly. Their weapons hummed. Lyra's body began to tremble, her eyes flickering brighter. Evan could almost feel the pressure in the air changing around her. Then a loud voice called out, "There she is." A flash of light exploded as a stun round fired. Evan pushed Lyra down. The shot hit the wall, sending sparks across the floor. That one action changed everything. The small wound on her shoulder where the light grazed her began to heal instantly. But the glow in her veins spread faster, brighter. She gasped and clutched her chest. "Lyra, what's happening?" Evan cried. "My body adapting," she said, trembling. "It thinks I'm in a war." The floor around her cracked slightly, metal bending under invisible force. The air hummed like distant thunder. The officers shouted, "Stand down! Do not move!" Lyra stood up slowly. Her hair floated as if underwater. "I told you," she said quietly. "Don't provoke me." In the next second, the lights went out. When they came back on, every officer was on the ground, unconscious, not dead. Their weapons were melted into harmless pieces of glass. Evan looked around in disbelief. What did you do?" Lyra exhaled shakily. "I stopped them without killing. But it hurts to hold back." She fell to her knees, clutching her side. Evan caught her before she hit the ground. "You need to rest," he said. "You saved them." "They'll never see it that way," she murmured. "To them, I'm a weapon." They found shelter in an abandoned storage bay beneath the academy. The old metal walls were cold, humming from the energy lines above. Lyra sat beside a crate, her body dimly glowing like a dying ember. Evan watched her carefully. "Why don't you just leave the academy? Go back to your people." "They wouldn't take me back," she said softly. "They see me as impure. The humans changed me when they experimented. I'm not Ratel anymore." "Not fully," he frowned. "Then where do you belong?" She looked at him, eyes heavy with sadness. "Nowhere." Silence stretched between them. The sound of engines echoed faintly through the metal floor. Evan felt helpless. She was powerful enough to destroy armies, yet she looked like a lost girl. Finally, he said, "If you want, you can stay with me, just until we find a way out." She stared at him for a long time, then nodded slowly. "Humans," she said softly. "You always risk everything for someone you barely know." "Maybe that's why you smiled that day," he said quietly. "Because you saw that in me." Her lips curved slightly. "Maybe." Hours passed. The academy above them remained on lockdown. Searchlights crossed the sky outside, scanning every building. Inside the storage bay, Evan tried to stay awake, but exhaustion won. He drifted into sleep against the metal wall. When he woke, Lyra was gone. He stood quickly, heart racing. "Lyra?" he whispered. No answer. A faint light flickered near the open door. She was standing there, looking out at the city skyline through the broken glass. Her silver skin glowed in the moonlight. "They'll keep coming," she said quietly, "and one day I won't be able to stop myself." Evan stepped closer. "Then don't face it alone." "You don't understand," she said. "My kind doesn't just survive, we adapt. The more we're hunted, the more powerful we become. If they keep pushing, I'll become the monster they fear. Then I'll remind you who you are," he said firmly. "You're Lyra, not a weapon." She looked back at him, her eyes soft but distant. If only it were that simple. Suddenly, the wall beside them exploded. A blast of white light filled the room as security drones burst in. "Target reacquired," a robotic voice shouted. Evan shielded his eyes, yelling, "Run!" Lyra turned toward the drones, her expression calm again. But this time, the glow around her was different, brighter, sharper, like a storm about to break. "Evan," she said quietly, "stay behind me." And as the drones fired again, she raised her hand, barely moving, and the air itself bent around her. The blast that followed wasn't sound. It was silence so heavy it made the world stop. The blast was silent, but the world trembled. The walls of the storage bay cracked like paper. Metal twisted and melted. The shockwave rolled outward, throwing the security drones like toys. When the smoke cleared, Evan saw Lyra standing in the middle of the chaos. Her eyes burned bright silver, her hair floating as if in slow motion. The air shimmered around her body, dense, heavy, alive. She didn't move. She just breathed. And every time she breathed, the ground vibrated. The drones, half destroyed, tried to fire again, but the energy bolts curved in midair and vanished before touching her. She had created something unseen, an invisible field around herself. "Lyra," Evan shouted over the noise. "Stop! You'll bring the whole building down." Her head turned slowly. The glow in her eyes dimmed for a second when she saw him. "Evan," she whispered. "I told you not to stay close. I'm not leaving you," he said firmly. A moment passed. The fire in her veins faded slightly. Her body relaxed. Then, from outside, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed. The Academy Enforcement Unit had arrived, soldiers in black armor carrying plasma rifles. Behind them hovered large mech suits with glowing cores. "Containment confirmed," the commander said through a speaker. "Subject Alpha, stand down or be neutralized." Evan stepped in front of Lyra. "Wait. She's not attacking anyone." "Human, move aside," the commander ordered. "She is a threat to all life on this station. She's defending herself." Evan shouted back. "You're the ones who started this." The soldiers didn't care. Dozens of red laser dots landed on Lyra's chest. Evan's heart pounded. "Please," he whispered to her, "don't fight them." Lyra looked at him with sad eyes. "I can't promise that." The soldiers fired. Bright bolts of plasma streaked through the air. Evan ducked, but not before seeing the light hit Lyra full on. Only, it didn't burn her. The plasma hit her skin and vanished, like water sinking into sand. She raised her hand slowly, and the light returned, twisting into a shining sphere between her palms. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "You shouldn't have done that." The sphere exploded, not outward, but upward. It absorbed the plasma, bending it into pure light that shot through the ceiling and into the sky. Every weapon in the room melted in seconds. The soldiers froze in terror. Their visors fogged from the heat. One mech fell backward, collapsing with a loud crash. Lyra's voice echoed across the hall, cold and clear. "Leave, now." Nobody moved. Evan ran to her side. "They'll send more," he said. "We need to go before the fleet arrives." She looked at him, still glowing faintly. "Where would we go?" "There's nowhere safe for me." "Then we'll make somewhere safe," he said. "But not here." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she nodded. "Follow me." They escaped through the maintenance tunnels under the academy. The walls were dark and dripping with condensation. Pipes hissed overhead. Lyra led the way, her faint light guiding them. "Where are we going?" Evan asked. "To the surface launch pad," she said. "There are civilian ships there. If we reach one before sunrise, we can leave orbit." Evan glanced at her, worried. Her glow was fading and her steps looked heavier. "You're weakening." "I used too much energy," she said softly. "My body isn't used to holding back." He frowned. "You mean, if you didn't hold back?" She cut him off. "This planet wouldn't exist anymore." He fell silent after that. They finally reached the outer deck. The night sky stretched wide above them, filled with stars and ships moving in perfect lines. The cold wind blew against their faces. A single transport ship was parked near the edge, its lights dim. It was old and dusty, but it could fly. Evan ran to the control panel, tapping at the holoscreen. "I can override it. My uncle taught me basic piloting when I was a kid." Lyra stood near the edge, staring out into space. The stars reflected in her silver eyes. "Do you ever wonder why humans still come to places like this?" she asked quietly. He paused. "What do you mean?" "Most species fear us. But humans, they talk to us. They reach out. They try to understand. Even when they should run." Evan smiled slightly. "Maybe that's our weakness." She looked at him, her voice soft. "Or your strength." Before he could answer, a bright red light flashed in the distance. The sound of engines thundered from above. Dozens of ships descended. Military patrols, their searchlights scanning the platform. "They've found us," Evan shouted. Lyra turned toward him. "Get on the ship. What about you?" She looked up at the incoming fleet, calm as ever. "They won't let us leave unless someone distracts them." "No." Evan grabbed her wrist. "You can't fight all of them." "I can delay them," she said. "That's enough." He refused to let go. "If you stay, I stay." Her expression softened. For a moment, her fingers brushed against his cheek. Her skin was warm, glowing faintly again. "You have a strange courage, human," she whispered. "Don't lose it." Before he could answer, she pushed him gently, just enough to send him stumbling backward into the open ramp of the transport ship. The door began to close. "Lyra!" he shouted, slamming his hand against the glass window. She smiled, soft, sad, and peaceful. "Goodbye, Evan." Then she turned toward the fleet. The ship surrounded the platform, bright lights cutting through the darkness. The commander's voice echoed from above. "Subject Alpha, you are surrounded. Surrender now." Lyra stood alone in the center of the landing pad. Her long hair danced in the wind. "If I surrender," she said quietly, "you will still fear me. This is your final warning." She closed her eyes. "Then learn why you fear Deathworlds." The air cracked. A pulse of energy rippled out from her body, sweeping across the platform like a silent storm. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring. The soldiers were thrown backward, but no one died. She wasn't killing them, she was forcing them down. Above her, the clouds tore apart, revealing the stars. The wind howled as pure light spiraled from her hands into the sky. Every screen on the ships flickered, showing one message in glowing letters: "Do not provoke the Deathworlds." Inside the small transport, Evan gripped the controls, watching the platform shake beneath him. The engines roared to life. "Come on, Lyra," he whispered. "Please." He didn't want to leave her. But the moment the storm reached the ship, the autopilot activated and launched them into the sky. The acceleration pinned him to the seat as the Academy shrank behind him. Through the cockpit window he saw it, the blinding light of her final act. It wasn't destruction, it was release. The energy rose into the clouds and vanished like starlight. Then everything went still. Hours later, the ship drifted beyond the planet's orbit. The system was silent again. Evan sat in the dark cabin, staring at the empty stars. The comms panel beeped once, an incoming signal. Static filled the speakers. Then through the noise, a familiar voice whispered, "Humans are not weak." "That's why I smiled." Evan froze. "Lyra?" he whispered. "Lyra, are you alive?" The signal faded, but before it vanished completely, a new message appeared on the hollow screen. "Origin Raytel Prime. Transmission encrypted. Text, she is safe. You proved humans can stand beside us." "The lesson is over." Evan leaned back, tears in his eyes. He smiled. "Lesson over, huh?" he whispered. Outside the window, the first light of dawn touched the edge of the ship. He looked toward the stars, toward the direction of Raytel. Epilogue: weeks later, the Galactic Council released an official statement. No casualties recorded. The Deathworld subject disappeared after containment. The Academy remains closed pending investigation. But whispers spread across the galaxy. Pilots reported seeing flashes of silver light near the Deathworld borders. Rumors said a girl with glowing eyes appeared among the ruins, helping stranded ships, healing the wounded, then vanishing again. They called her the Deathworld Guardian, and in a small human settlement on Mars, a young man named Evan Ross built a small ship of his own. He never spoke about what happened on Epsilon Prime, but every night, he stared at the stars and whispered, "If you can hear me, I'm coming to find you." Because somewhere out there beyond the cold galaxies, he knew a Deathworld girl was watching the same stars, waiting, smiling, and ending every lesson with peace instead of war. End of Part 3.